Imagine the internet for a second. And not the screen you look at, not the keyboard under your fingers, but the raw data itself.
Right, the actual architecture of it.
Exactly. The
Okay.
electricity, the pulses, that whole rushing stream of information. Now, imagine you could step inside that stream.
Like completely physically bypass the hardware.
Yeah, no body, no eyes, no hands, just your consciousness completely untethered, surfing on pure energy.
I mean, it sounds like the ultimate freedom, doesn't it? A place without any physical limits whatsoever.
It does sound amazing. But in the world we are exploring today, that space has a specific name. It's called Mobius.
Hmm.
And here is the catch. And it is a massive catch for anyone trying this.
There's always a catch.
Always. If you are in that space, existing as pure consciousness, and you drift just a little too far out.
You don't just lose your Wi-Fi connection.
No, you lose your mind. Literally.
You risk being completely reabsorbed, like dissolved into the static of the current. It is this incredibly high-stakes environment where the line between, infinite potential and just pure existential erasure is razor thin.
And that is exactly where we are dropping in today. We are doing a deep dive into the source material titled Range Error, Behind the Curtain, Chapter 13.
It's a brilliant piece of text.
It really is. And let me tell you, for everyone listening, this isn't just your standard tech thriller or some abstract sci-fi wander. It is a psychological cage match.
That is the perfect way to describe it. It's a narrative that uses these high-concept metaphysical mechanics, like this idea of conscious connection, to explore some very primal, very human themes.
We are talking about the desire for control, the absolute obsession with legacy, and that terrifying realization that sometimes trying to save something is exactly how you destroy it.
Our mission today is really to unpack all of that. We need to look at the relationship between the two central figures in this chapter and figure out how conscious connection bridges the gap between the physical and the metaphysical.
Right, so let's introduce those two central figures because they are just fascinating to watch bounce off each other. You have Grace and you have 87, and the dynamic between them is, well, it's tense.
Tense is putting it mildly. It's predatory. That is really the best word for it.
So let's set the scene for you. We are in Mobius, this living tapestry of energy. Grace is described in the text as an organic sample.
Which is an important distinction.
Very important. She's got an inhibitor, so she is technically tethered, technically safe from being reabsorbed. And because of that safety net, she is just having the time of her life.
She really is.
She is treating this terrifying, infinite void of living energy like it's a neon roller rink in 1983.
The text actually compares her movements to Flashdance, doesn't it?
It does. It says she's performing a legato of moves. She's radiant. She is moving with this completely reckless joy. And then you pan the camera over, so to speak, and there's 87.
The observer lurking in the shadows. And he is definitely not dancing.
No, 87 does not dance. He is watching her. And he is described as sardonic, watchful. He knows the rules of this place. He knows that play is inefficient.
Right. Play is not something that is encouraged or even respected among samples in his world at the place called Inter.
But he still can't look away from her. And this is where the psychology gets so complex. He finds her unsettlingly beautiful.
And we have to pause on that phrasing. Usually when a character calls someone beautiful, it's a romantic beat. Here, it feels a lot more like a threat assessment.
Oh, absolutely. That word unsettlingly is doing so much heavy lifting in that sentence. Because 87 isn't crushing on her, he is hunting.
He is. He firmly believes that Grace is hiding something inside her, a specific source code. And this isn't just, a neat string of data to him.
It's everything.
It is the key to his freedom, is the key to lasting power. He needs it.
So he's watching this exuberant performance, this moment of pure, untethered joy from Grace, and he's basically just dissecting it. He's waiting for her to slip up. He needs her to unknowingly lead him right to the treasure.
Which creates this incredible suffocating tension for the reader. Grace feels completely free, completely joyful, but she is actually being stalked.
And because she is so caught up in the play of it all, she starts drifting.
Yeah, she gets careless.
She does. She moves away from the safety of those lifelines. She is venturing out into the deep end of the pool, utterly oblivious to the fact that there are sharks out there, or rather, the text calls them savage undercurrents.
N87 is technically her safety net in this scenario, but he is a safety net that actively wants to rob her blind.
Precisely. And that drifting, that loss of focus, it leads to one of the most surreal transitions in the entire story. Grace floats away from the abstract living energy of Mobius, and she finds a door.
Just a door floating in the data.
Yeah, she goes through it, and suddenly she's not in the void anymore.
She is standing in an old English hallway.
Which is just bizarre, right? You go from a pure metaphysical data stream to, like, wainscoting and sideboards.
It's incredibly grounding, but it's also deeply eerie, because it suggests that Mobius isn't just a network. It connects to memories, or to history, or to very specific, tangible moments in time.
And on the sideboard in this very normal-looking English hallway, she finds an object, a book, the Sumerian King's List.
Now, you really have to pay attention to how she interacts with this book. Remember, in Mobius, you don't have a physical body. You don't read words with your eyes. You absorb the information.
The source text has this amazing description. It says the words feel like cells in a body.
It is such a visceral way to describe reading. It is not an intellectual exercise for her. It is completely biological. She feels the fears and the passions of the people described in the book as if they were literally her own memories.
And the story that she absorbs from this Sumerian King's List, it is the thematic skeleton key for everything else that happens in this deep dive.
It really is the anchor of the whole narrative. The book describes these otherworldly beings, deities essentially, who pass divine knowledge down to humans.
Knowledge that, crucially, was never meant for human hands.
Right, and the text notes that these deities weren't necessarily malicious. They wanted to give their loved ones an advantage. They wanted to leave a legacy to help their people survive.
But this act of giving, this overstepping of fundamental order, as it's called, it didn't save anyone. It actually created destructive talents and dangerous appetites.
It backfired spectacularly.
It created entropy, that is the exact word the text uses, disorder, chaos. By trying to cheat the system to protect their legacy, these beings essentially ensured their own demise.
There is a specific realization Grace has in that moment that really stuck with me. She thinks to herself that she couldn't imagine a worse curse than to have a legacy perish entirely as a result of your own efforts to save it.
It's the ultimate tragic irony. You destroy the very thing you love because you tried way too hard to control its fate.
I want you to hold on to that thought, because that concept of trying to control fate is going to come roaring back.
Oh, it definitely is. So Grace is having this incredibly profound, terrifying realization about entropy, and she absentmindedly tries to pick up the book.
Forgetting for a second where she is.
Right, she forgets that physics works completely differently in Mobius. She has no hands. She is just pure consciousness. But her intention moves the physical object in the memory. The book literally floats into the air.
And this leads to a classic ghost story moment, because there was a woman in that hallway, a real historical person in the memory, and she turns and sees a heavy book just floating in midair.
And she screams.
Naturally. And Grace is absolutely terrified by this. She realizes, oh wait, I am the monster in this room.
She has breached a barrier that she was never supposed to cross. The text says she feels like she broke an innate rule of the universe.
So she panics. She flees the hallway. She tries to get back to her body, back to the safety of the stream and her tether. But when you panic in a purely mental landscape like Mobius, you don't just walk in a straight line to the exit.
No, your thoughts scatter, you take a wrong turn.
And this particular wrong turn happens to be absolutely catastrophic for 87.
She stumbles out of the hallway and into a lab. It is cold, it is sterile, and it is full of these pods containing young children.
And Grace stops dead in her tracks, because she sees the specific markings on the pods. They are described as chillingly familiar. She recognizes exactly what this place is.
This is the moment the predator officially becomes the prey, isn't it? 87 has been watching her from the shadows this whole time, feeling so superior, completely in control of the board, and suddenly she is standing in his nursery.
She is looking directly at his origin story. She is seeing the raw vulnerability that he has hidden from absolutely everyone. 87 isn't some born aristocratic leader. He is a product. He is a sample, just exactly like the children in those pods.
And his internal reaction is just immediate, visceral panic. He thinks to himself that it wouldn't do to have her stumble across the real reason he had found her.
If she sees this and understands it, the entire power dynamic flips. She might feel pity for him. And for a character like 87, who operates entirely on dominance and intellect, pity is a fate far worse than death.
He cannot let her see him as a victim under any circumstances.
So he hits the emergency eject button.
Quite literally. He wrenches open this circular door in the corridors of Mobius. And he doesn't gently guide her out of the vision. He uses the raw current to just violently flush her out.
It's described like a riptide. He essentially drowns her out of the vision to protect his own secret.
And that brutal ejection brings us to the second major setting of this deep dive. The transition is incredibly jarring. One second, Grace is a terrified ghost in a sterile lab, and the next, she is choking on actual seawater.
Talk about a change of scenery. We go from abstract data space to Syracuse, ancient Greece.
The sensory details the author uses here are just great. She's not a weightless consciousness anymore. Her body is incredibly heavy. She's freezing cold. She is coughing up lungfuls of salt water. There is literal seaweed tangled in her hair. She is utterly miserable.
And standing right over her, perfectly dry, perfectly composed.
87, manifested in human form.
And not just any human form. He has deliberately chosen an avatar that is described as having piercing blue eyes, absolutely flawless features. He looks like a literal knight in shining armor.
And Grace absolutely hates it. She's sitting there picking kelp out of her teeth, feeling gross and violated by the current, and he looked like he just stepped out of a high-end cologne commercial. She finds him so incredibly annoying and arrogant.
I really love that beat because it grounds their very metaphysical conflict in this petty human annoyance. But 87 isn't just posing for his own ego. He brought her to this specific coordinate for a reason. He tells her where they are, the siege of Syracuse.
Okay, so history buffs listening know that this is very bad news. The Romans are at the gates.
Actually, the Romans are through the gates. The city is actively falling. There is chaos and slaughter everywhere. But 87 ignores all of that and takes her to a specific room to observe a specific man.
Archimedes, the greatest mathematician and inventor of the ancient world.
And what is this genius doing while his entire city burns to the ground outside his window? He is locked in his chamber. He's on his hands and knees, frantically working in the dust on the floor.
He is drawing circles.
He is completely consumed by trying to protect his work. When the Roman soldiers burst into the swords drawn, literal blood on their armor, Archimedes doesn't beg for his life. He doesn't try to bribe them with gold.
He just covers the dust with his hands and says, "Do not disturb my circles."
It is such a famous historical quote, but usually we hear it framed as a quirky story about a genius being too absorbed in his work to notice reality. Here, watching it happen in real time through Grace's eyes, it is deeply tragic. The soldier just strikes him down, kills him on the spot.
Grace is horrified by this. She actually tries to jump in physically. She wants to save him from the blade.
But 87 stops her. He physically holds her back.
Rah.
And he drops the golden rule of this kind of metaphysical time travel. You can't change the past.
Grace pushes back, though. And this is the real crux of their entire philosophical conversation. She asks, well, what about the future? Can we change that?
And 87 gives this very complex, fascinating answer about conscious choice.
He talked about alignment. He says that conscious choice creates a permanent symmetry between the physical world and the metaphysical world. It's a fusion of the two states.
It sounds a bit abstract at first, right? But then he points down to the dust on the floor. He tells Grace to really closely look at what Archimedes was actually drawing before he died.
And this is the twist in the text that just made my jaw completely drop.
It wasn't just standard geometry. It wasn't just math equations.
Archimedes was drawing Mobius.
Exactly.
Yeah.
87 reveals that Archimedes had seen the writing on the wall years prior. He knew the Roman invasion was inevitable. He knew that conventional weapons, even his famous catapults, wouldn't be enough to save his people.
So he wasn't just drawing shapes, he was trying to build the ultimate defense, a literal computational device.
An Antikythera mechanism.
Yes. The implication the author makes here is brilliant. That real-world ancient analog computer we found in a shipwreck wasn't just an astronomical calendar in this story's universe.
It was an attempt to physically harness the power of Mobius. Archimedes was trying to build a machine to manage infinite computations. He was essentially trying to invent time travel.
He was trying to compute the exact variables needed to change the past and save Syracuse.
And he failed. 87 coldly points out the brutal irony of the situation. Archimedes failed to recognize the larger pattern. He gave his life protecting the blueprints for a creation he hoped to realize, but the creation was never finished because the city fell.
We're right back to that word from the hallway with the Sumerian book. Entropy.
It is the exact same pattern playing out again. Archimedes tried to overstep the fundamental order. He tried to hack the rules of the universe to save his home and secure his legacy. And the result? He died bleeding in the dust, and his city burned anyway.
But Grace looks at this scene, and she doesn't just see failure, she sees nobility. She argues with 87, saying that he gave his life to protect a creation he believed in. She respects the sacrifice of it.
And how does 87 react to that?
Well, 87 is usually so cynical about everything. He normally just calls a failure, but in this specific moment, he hesitates.
He really does. The text notes that his eyes glittered their objection, but then he actually relents. He lets out a sigh.
And he admits to her that there's a poetry, a comedy, and a symmetry to finding someone or something that is actually worth your everything.
That feels like a massive shift for his character. He is quietly admitting that even if an endeavor ends in total ruin, the absolute devotion to it still has intrinsic value.
He even tips his cap to Morgan, the mastermind who is protecting Grace in the real world, acknowledging that she has set up a genuinely brilliant trap. He respects the indisputable pattern of fundamentals she uses, even if he resents being caught in it.
But, here's what I really can't stop thinking about after reading all of this. 87 is standing there in the ruins of Syracuse, lecturing Grace about Archimedes' fatal flaw. He's lecturing her about the Sumerian curse of overstepping boundaries.
He sees the pattern so clearly in history. If you try to force unnatural control over the system to secure your own legacy, you just create entropy and destroy yourself.
He sees it perfectly in everybody else.
But isn't he doing the exact same thing right now?
Yeah, that is the real range error of the chapter title. That is his massive blind spot.
Think about it from a step back. He is actively manipulating Grace. He is trying to force her to unknowingly give up this source code. He is trying to overstep the fundamental rules of his own existence as a sample in order to secure his own absolute freedom.
He is Archimedes drawing in the dust. He is the Sumerian god handing out forbidden fire to humans. He honestly believes he is the exception to the rule. He thinks he is the one holding the pen, writing the code that governs the universe.
But he's not. He's just another variable in the exact same equation.
And that is the true tragedy. Or maybe the comedy, as he called it. He talks so much about symmetry. Well, if conscious choice creates symmetry, then 87's choices are perfectly aligning him with a historical legacy of destruction.
He thinks he is building an escape hatch from the lab, but he is really just setting up his own siege of Syracuse.
It really begs the question for the reader. Can you ever truly see the system you are inside of? 87 firmly believes he is the one looking from behind the curtain. But usually, when you pull back the curtain on your own ego, you just find a mirror.
That is a haunting way to put it. It completely reframes the whole villain archetype for this story. He isn't just a purely evil antagonist. He's a tragic figure stuck in a loop that he is far too smart to actually see.
Right, because raw intelligence doesn't automatically make you immune to hubris. In fact, it usually just makes the hubris much more elaborate and dangerous.
So if we look at the other side of the coin, we have Grace. She survived the terrifying hallway. She survived the violent ejection from the lab. She survived the drowning landing in Syracuse.
And why did she survive? Because she flows, she dances, she plays with the energy.
She remains untethered in her mindset.
Exactly. 87 is desperately trying to control the massive current of Mobius with an iron grip. Grace surrenders to it. And in every single historical example we have looked at today, the one who tries to control the chaos gets crushed by it. The one who rides the wave is the one who survives.
It makes you wonder, maybe the source code he is so desperately looking for inside her isn't actually a literal line of data text. Maybe it's just that simple organic ability to let go.
If he could just learn to dance, maybe he would finally get his freedom.
But for a guy who heavily prides himself on being the flawless knight in shining armor, letting go, losing control, and risking looking foolish might be the one literal thing he is entirely incapable of doing.
And that rigidness might just be his ultimate undoing.
So what is the big takeaway for you listening at home? Aside from the obvious lesson of don't disturb Archimedes while he is working on a math problem.
I think it's really about finding that delicate balance between ambition and acceptance. You can strive for a legacy. You can try to build the miraculous machine to save the world. But you have to respect the circles. You have to respect the fundamental order of things.
You cannot force the universe to entirely bend to your personal will without it snapping back at you.
Exactly. Because eventually, entropy wins. Eventually, the Roman soldier comes through the door. Eventually, the savage current of Mobius drags you under. The only real question is, will you spend your final moments fighting the current, or will you find a way to swim with it?
We are going to leave you with that provocative thought to mull over on your own time. 87 is watching the grand pattern unfold, firmly believing he is the absolute master of it. But if this deep dive into Chapter 13 has taught us anything today, it's that the exact moment you think you have finally beaten the system is usually the exact moment the system beats you.
Symmetry. It always comes back to symmetry.